Hey there, good evening and welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So, the series is all done, 31 days of 31 progressive rock albums from the 1980s that I had never heard before. It was a lot. I have to say it was a lot and time consuming, but I got a lot out of it, and I got quite a few bands now that are now on my list to purchase that weren't on there before. And so what we're going to do now, this is the final kind of wrap-up video in which I'm going to give you my preference for these songs. I hate to say the word favorites because I simply haven't listened to them very much. Some of them I listened to a month ago. I'm not even sure what I was listening to. I'm just going basically on feeling with some of them. But anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to list them in my order of preference from first to last, or 1 to 31. I'm not going to do up and then down again. There's no point to it. So just going to give you what I liked first all the way down to what I liked last. And, I'll try to give a little bit of an explanation as to why, depending on whether it's obvious or not. Anyways, number 1 for me would be Clutching at Straws by Marillion. I knew this album was good. I hadn't heard it before. I've listened to the first 3, but I hadn't got to this one. But I knew this was good. Many people had told me, and I just had never bothered to go out and actually listen to it. And it was like great. I think it's got a real chance to be my favorite Marillion album. Really liked it a lot, and just everything about it was great. The next one was number 2. Brother, Where Are You Bound? This was by Supertramp. Okay, so as you know, I was a fairly consistently listening to Supertramp. They were one of my favorite bands early on in my life, and they maintained that when my daughter came along. I was listening to them a lot more even then. And they kind of faded a bit, and I had gotten away from them after Breakfast in America because I had begun to drift from different bands, and they were one of them. And boy, I missed out a lot because this is a fantastic album. It might be their heaviest album that I've ever heard them play. Certainly that progressive part on the end of the album was fantastic, better than anything I'd ever heard them do. I don't know if it's my favorite because I only listened to it once, but I think it's going to make a huge impact on my Supertramp lists. Anyways, next up, another album that very much surprised me because I didn't know anything about these guys, hadn't heard anything from them, and they were suggested as one of the neo-prog bands from the 1980s, Palace. But they weren't the one that I thought I would like more. I thought some of the other ones would be higher up, but this album, The Sentinel, was fantastic. I loved it. Just can't wait to get it. I just think it's a great album. These first 4 or 5 albums, the top 4 really could have went any way. Could have easily been. You listen them in a number, but really they're all number 1s to me. Next up is Perfect Symmetry, number 4, from Fate's Warning. This is another band that I had heard about and knew about, but really kind of thought they were going to be probably siding on the heavy metal side, and I probably would like them, but not as much. But I love this album. Definitely could have been number 1 too. All of them could have been number 1. It was by a hair for the top 4 spots. I need a little bit of a dip now to the number 5 album, which I thought would go higher. Probably could have went higher too, but it was right at the beginning that I listened to it, so my memory of it's faded slightly, but I think it'll probably do well. I'm going to definitely get it, and that's Tales of a Lush Attic by IQ. Great album. Next album out, a little bit of a dip, but not too much. Still a really good album, and that's The Jewel from Pendragon. Fantastic. I thought that was great as well. Then we start to have a little bit of a dip here. Not a huge dip, but a little bit, and that's to King Crimson's Discipline album, came in number 7. So from the top 7 I had on my top list. Easily the top 7. From this point on, the drop begins to become more noticeable. So then we go to the next album, which was the one I did a couple days ago, called Soltis, from the group Soltis, the band Silent Dance. I really enjoyed their kind of atmospheric prog with the synthesizers, and the one female vocalist. I was going to go back and look, but I just didn't have time. But the couple songs that the one tenor vocalist did. Now I don't know if there's 2, or they both sang, or they didn't sing, or maybe she's just got different ranges. I'm not sure, but when she did the tenor vocals, I thought she was just amazing, and so a lot of this ranking comes because of her vocal performance. Silent Dance from Solstice. Sorry, can never get that. Now here's a band that was really different, very different than anything I'd listened to before. Had never even thought about this kind of music before. Well, I knew it was psychedelic, and with some prog elements to it, but they're also an instrumental band, so I thought, I'll listen to them because the name was very different and the album covers were very, very unique and intriguing. So I decided that I would choose one of the ones. I chose this one, Pungent Effulgent from Osric Tentacles. I thought this was really good album, like much better than I would have thought. When I was ranking it, it started out further down, and then I started remembering stuff that I'd listened to from it, and it just kept moving up until it ended up in the 9th spot, which is a good spot for it. I think it's a pretty solid album. Next one out, Momentary Lapse of Reason from Pink Floyd. Very Pink Floyd-ish, has all the Pink Floyd things. Maybe not as good instrumentally. Maybe there's not as there's no really great, huge #1 track on this album, or any kind of really different tracks. It's just a solid Pink Floyd album, and so I gave it 10th spot. Probably might have went a bit higher, but I didn't. I actually considered moving it up a few, but then I decided, I like the guys where they are, so keep Pink Floyd where it is in number 10. The next one was today's album, the last one. I really liked the heaviness of the album. I liked the rhythmatic section. The bass player was fantastic. Vocalist, I had good range and stuff. He just reminded me of the guy from Saga, and I don't mind the guy from Saga, but he was like a poor man's Saga. So anyways, I gave it coming at 11, so that's 12 by 12 Night came in 11th. I probably should have put him 12th, would have been easier to remember, right? Okay, next, this was an album that I both liked quite a bit and was disappointed quite a bit. There was maybe a little bit too many instrumentals on it, and I actually hoped for more acoustic stuff, but still a good album. Deflector from Steve Hackett. I think he's a great musician. Haven't been blown away by any of his albums yet, so I don't know what that's about. I thought I would be, but I wasn't. Okay, the next one we start to get in some of the weirder ones. Number 13, probably apropos, I chose The Girl Who Was Death from Devil Doll. This album, surprisingly, I liked. It only had the 3 tracks, and one was 25 minutes of silence, which made no sense. The last track was really just a throw-in that they'd taken from The Prisoner, the movie The Prisoner. Same spot that they took on Iron Maiden. So really they weren't tracks. The first track was great though. A couple more tracks like that, album would have probably went up quite a bit. The Girl Who Was Death from Devil Doll. Next is A from Jethro Tull. I like this. It was a good Jethro Tull album. Not bad. I get a feeling that there's a lot of drum track on this. Sorry, having trouble with my staying awake again. Anyways, Jethro Tull's A album. I felt there was a little bit of drum track on this, a little bit synthesizers, but not a bad album by any stretch. Pretty solid album. Next up, the Lorelei from Quasar had its really good points. There was some like really majestic stuff on here, stuff that I liked quite a bit, and then there was some stuff that wasn't so good. I didn't think the vocalists were, like, they had that twin vocaling going. Same as Solstice. The only difference is Solstice was more harmonic, and the one of the vocalists, at least, or both of them, if there was two, at least the one that I liked quite a bit was really good, and I didn't find that as much with Quasar. But they weren't bad. She was a little high on the high end vocally, which always kind of, especially if it's forced, it's not as good, I don't think. So the next one was a band that I originally had further down, and then when I was writing this, I said, no, this band, I remember this has got to go higher. So I put them up to 16th. Eros from Dune, which was the French band. I call them Dune, even though it's spelled Dun, because of the song Arrakis, which is on there. Next, the next one up, I thought would have been higher, but it was primarily, a lot of it was an instrumental album. And instrumental albums generally, unless they're really good, like the Osric Tentacles one, which I thought was really good. Unless they're like that, they tend to mid-range at best. And so this is the album Nude from Camel. Next one was Barclay James Harvest's Face to Face. Wasn't a bad album. It was a little bit milder and a little more mainstream sounding than I had hoped for from Barclay James Harvest, but you got to remember it's in the 80s now. They may have changed their style to compete commercially with the rest of a lot of the prog bands from the 80s went that way, and then this new wave of progressive rock kind of took over. So anyways, next one was an Italian band, Stormy Six. I thought they were pretty good. Al Vola was the album. All instrumental, but really pretty solid album, I think. Pretty solid. Next up was Voodoo Shane, or from Ange, which I thought was the Angel band, but I'm feeling like this is not the same band as the one he was recording, so maybe there's two Ange bands as well. I don't know. Anything's possible, right? Anyways, it wasn't a bad album, pretty good. I probably should have gave it a higher rating, but everything was in French, so the language barrier is somewhat difficult. But I thought the music was pretty solid overall, and the vocals were pretty good. Probably could have moved it up half a dozen spots easily as well. But if I fit it here at number 20, I think it's fine where it is. The next one is Reflections from the Fire Pool from I want to spell this right. Jam Karat. Pretty interesting album. And maybe could have finished higher too, but it was a while ago again, so I'm not remembering as much of it as I probably should. And then we get to the Old Rotten Hat, which is number 22. I had to give this a higher rank, even though at first I really didn't like it. I almost started going to take it off. I said, no. I said, I'm going to stick with it. And this is from Robert Wyatt, of course, and I stuck with it. And then it grew on me a bit. I actually kind of like some aspects of it towards the end, even though it's kind of very mid-range music. Like, it doesn't vary outside a box. It's still, and it had a lot of views for some reason. I'm not sure why that happened, but just kind of took right off. The next is the Cardiacs. I had some conversations with people about it. Probably raised them up because of the conversations, explaining stuff. The album, The Seaside, not a bad, for this type of music, it wasn't bad. Probably the best of a bad lot, I guess. The next one was Merlin from Kayak. Now, the first couple of tracks, if they'd stayed with that, they would be much higher up than they are. Those two tracks have put them where they are. If it wasn't for those two tracks, they would have probably been fighting for the last spot. I just didn't like any of the stuff, especially on the back side. The front side, the first couple of tracks, I liked them quite a bit, and then it just was a nosedive into the cement after that with them. But anyways, they deserved to be a little higher than they were, so that's where I put them. Next was a band that I thought would do much better than they did, and that's Saga and the album Wildest Dreams. I just found this to be a piece of commercial stuff that I just, like, it was okay. I'm not going to say what I was going to say. It wasn't bad, but it was a disappointment. Fairly disappointing. So, anyway, so after that, we get to the Fault Line by Bird Songs from Mesozoic. Different, very different. I don't know if it's for me. I don't know much more about it. It's not really memorable to me at all, but I think it's better than some of the ones that came below. So for the next 5, really starts to take a nosedive. Like, these are not, to me, are not good albums. Works Resume on the Tower. Yeah, they did have those twinning vocals, and yeah, it wasn't too bad. But all that noise and racket, and it just didn't seem to make any sense to me. I put it in 27th because the musical part wasn't terrible. It's not really a glowing recommendation, I know. Okay, number 28. The music was not too bad. Music was not too bad, but the voice, Peter Hamill's voice, there was tracks where it was just absolutely like scratching nails on a board. I felt like I would rather have had a cat scratch my eyes out, or at least scratch my ears out to save me the pain. So I gave him 28. He originally was dead last, and then I thought, the music was better than these other ones, so had to move him up. Okay, Nazca. Okay, this is a Mexican instrumental. I didn't really understand it. To be in fairness to it, I didn't really understand it. I couldn't follow it. I didn't know what was going on. It didn't really seem to make any kind of musical sense to me. But maybe you need to really have somebody, or you need to be exposed to this and maybe have somebody with you who understands it, can point stuff out. Then maybe it'll make sense, you know. So I couldn't give it a high rating, but I gave it the 29th spot because I don't think it was a bad album. It requires some understanding. That's what I think. Okay, so the last 2 albums, pretty much the worst 2. I don't know if they were hands down the worst 2, but they certainly were my worst 2. Moon Songs from the Thinking Plague. I hope I never hear it again. And then the last one, I'm not going to say too much. Really was surprised by this. Really thought this artist would be higher up just because of his association with a band that I like quite a bit, and that's Adrian Belew. I really thought that he would be mid-range at worst, but I didn't like his album at all. I was negative during the whole process of listening to it. I said lots of stuff that probably wasn't really justified. I just don't like the album. And to put it mildly, I don't like that album so much that I hope I never hear any of his albums. And I know he's got 20 of them, so it's not really fair to kind of put all of that on one album. You know, maybe it's not that bad, but I just found nothing really musical about it. I've never been a huge fan of his vocals. I've been a big admirer of his abilities. He has a lot of really good musical abilities, but I don't know, this album, if that's what you want to call it, a musical album, I'm not calling it that. I'm just calling it noise on a record player. Anyways, that's not a nice way to end off, but that's the way it's going to end off here. So we had a nice series of really good, interesting stuff, and this was quite a bit of work. We have a new series going to be starting on January. The first day will just basically be me kind of painting the landscape for what's to come. I think this will be a lot funner, a lot shorter videos too, I think. And it's kind of like watching football, you know, like who's going to throw the touchdown. I think you're going to get a lot of that feel. So I'm looking forward to doing this series, and we'll get there'll be more of an announcement on it on this week on the channel, which will come out a couple days from now. Well, actually it'll be tomorrow, right? Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah, there you go. So hope you enjoyed this, and look forward to seeing you in the next series. So please like and subscribe. It's much appreciated, and we'll be back tomorrow with this week. So take care. Bye.